Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's Lead Lightning Talk, Cultural Competency in Audio Description and Alt Text. I am Sarah Berzio of the Office of Accessibility and VSA at the Kennedy Center. I will be assisting moderating today along with my colleagues Jessica Swanson and Cindy Brown. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce you to the Zoom control panel. Live captioning will be viewed in a separate browser window by clicking the stream text link in the chat. Captions can be viewed within Zoom by clicking the CC Live Transcript button. The ASL interpreters will be spotlighted throughout the presentation. Broadcast messages from the moderator will appear in the chat box, which can be found on your control panel. If you have trouble connecting to the computer audio, try clicking Audio Settings. You may also connect to the audio through your telephone. If you use your telephone, be sure that you mute your computer speakers. You can submit questions to the presenter using the Q&A button. If you prefer to speak your question rather than type it, please click on the hand-shaped raise hand icon, and we will unmute your microphone at the appropriate time. Clicking on the View Options menu at the top of your screen allows you to zoom the window in or out for any portion of the presentation that has a screen share. A survey will be presented to you at the end of the webinar. We ask that you help us with feedback by completing the survey, and we thank you for your time. The survey will populate after you leave this webinar. And with that, I will hand this over to Cindy Brown.
There, I'm unmuted. Hello, all. My name is Cindy Brown. I am the coordinator for the Access VSA International Network. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman with short red hair and round red glasses, and it is my pleasure to introduce Thomas Reid to you today. Thomas is an audio producer, voiceover talent, audio description narrator, consultant, and advocate, as well as the host and producer of Read My Mind Radio, a podcast featuring compelling people impacted by all degrees of blindness and disability. Through his annual season, Flipping the Script on Audio Description, Thomas explores the art and examines its implications on the community. A member of the Social Audio Description Collective and a freelance audio description narrator, Thomas has appeared on projects for Netflix, HBO Max, Hulu, PBS, and more. He provides consultations for independent filmmakers, film festivals. He co-facilitates workshops and serves as moderator or panelist for discussions on audio description and content accessibility. Thank you, Thomas, for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thomas Reid, as Cindy said. I am a brown-skinned black man with a smooth-shaven bald head, full, neat salt and pepper beard, and I'm wearing dark shades and a black button-up shirt that has a bit of a pattern in white. And I'm currently seated in my vocal booth that has beige curtains on the side, kind of hiding some of that not so pretty looking sound pattern, proofing stuff. So I want to start off with this topic of cultural competency with a little bit of a definition of cultural competency. So what we're talking about here is, simply put, respect for and understanding of different cultures. It's exhibited in the way that we communicate, right? In the way we communicate with each other, and in the way we collaborate with one another as well. So we're talking about valuing diversity, having the capacity for self-assessment, cultural self-assessment, and being conscious of the various dynamics that occur when cultures interact. Okay? I guess when we're talking about cultural competency, we need to realize that they should be reflected throughout the various parts of an organization. So we're talking about policy, administration, and whatever the practices of that organization. So whatever the output is, it should be reflected in that output, right? It should also be reflected in the attitudes and the structures of the organization itself. All right, so let's talk about how it applies to audio description specifically. Whether the description is provided by a post-production company, the audio description or the image description, if it's being created by a post-production company or an individual contractor, right? So that could be all these various instances. We're talking usually if we're talking about films that are going to appear in a large theater, for example, or on a streaming network, it's probably a post-production company. But many independent projects, many live projects, right, are done by individuals. But either which way, there are various stages associated with the creation of that AD or those image descriptions that are pretty much a part of every project. They might not be called this, but they exist to certain capacity, right? So if we name the stages and we look at them, you'll see right there how cultural competency is impacted. So we'll start off with the first one, which is in a post-production company, it probably goes by the AD director, right? Or basically the project manager. So this is that person who is making the decisions, assembling the team, doing that type of stuff, the management. And you can see there, right? So if at that point, if this person isn't considering cultural competency, isn't approaching the work with this, it's probably not going to happen down the line, right? That top-down approach. Because that person is the person who is assigning the writer. They're the one who is assigning the narrator. All of these things that you'll see that affect cultural competency or the representation of cultural competency within the AD. So down to the writer. Let's go to the writer, the first part of the process, right? Who's writing this description? Again, audio or image description. That person, the writer, needs to be able to identify their own bias. So if they're working on a project, this could take many forms. I know of a person who does not work on horror. They just don't they cannot watch horror films. So they need to recuse themselves. They step away from that project because they're not the right person for that project. That's just one thing. That's not necessarily cultural competency, but it is a reason for stepping away. There are folks we all have various biases. So one thing is that if you realize, okay, this is not for you because of whatever the reason is, you can step away. It's just not the project for you. The other thing is that you can also say, well, I don't know much about the culture that's associated with this film, with this content. But you have the ability to research. And if you have an open mind, that is something that you can kind of, figure out. What does this garment represent? I see it. I thought it was X, Y, and Z, but let me do the research and find out what this really represents. That's cultural competency. And so if it's not happening right there in the writer portion of the project, you can see how that's a problem. Quality control, that's the next step. All of these projects, again, no matter who's taking care of them, there should be a quality control component. We often recommend that it is, especially at this stage of the script, that there's a blind person because the content is created for blind people. So a blind person should be able to kind of go through that script and give feedback about, is this appropriate? Is this appropriately communicating what it's intended to or not? But even in that stage, again, if that person does not recognize their own biases, same problem as the writer. So those same things, either they should recuse themselves, step away from the project, or maybe they should also do a little bit of research if necessary. Narration. This is a big one to me because narration is what people kind of experience. That's really the first level that people are experiencing audio description. That's who you're interacting with, the narrator. If we're talking about image descriptions, well, there's no audio necessarily there's nothing being narrated necessarily. Although what I would recommend is that writer always think about if this image description is going to be said aloud, did I write this appropriately? Because there's a difference in writing for narration, writing for speech, and writing for someone to just read. And so making sure that it's appropriate, as well as making sure all the words are fitting the content, fitting the rating, and all of that type of thing. But when we're talking about narrator, I think one of the best ways is actually for me to give you an example. A narrator should also be representative of the culture, that voice, because again, if we're talking about a project that is based within a specific culture, I like to think about it that, well, would this person have been casted by the originator, the original content creator, whether that be the director, whether that be producers, would that person actually be casted? So here's an example. Let me go ahead and do my little screen sharing thing. Let's hope that works. Okay. I do want to share my sound, so I check that. And I'm talking my way through this, y'all. And let's see. And here we go. I think I should just be able to share screen at this point.
Launch meeting dash zoom dash screen Windows Media Player.
If you hear
Windows
this.
Media
So
Player.
here's two quick
Live
examples of
transcription left pick.
this. Let's go.
A question
hear
appears
that?
in Spanish text.
What does Juanito mean?
Thomas, we're seeing your Zoom meeting screen right now.
Okay, so you don't hear
Launch
the...
meeting dash zoom
We
dash
can
Google
hear
Chrome.
it, but we're just
Media
seeing,
meeting
is that
control.
okay?
Oh, yeah, I don't care.
Windows Media Player.
Okay.
Windows Media Player.
Okay, here we go. We'll start that
Control S.
again. There we go.
A question appears in Spanish text.
What does Juanito mean?
Sueñito. It means little dream.
As the question fades, the word suanito lingers. A hand smacks an alarm clock, which reads 5:30 a.m. The goateed man rises wearily and sits on the edge of his bed. He gazes across his humble bedroom at some items attached to a cabinet door, including a gray flat cap, as well as photos of a man sporting this cap as he plays with a young boy. There's also a photo of a tropical cabana and a sticker reading República Dominicana.
Okoye sits in meditation, facing a window in the huge jet. T'Challa sits beside Nakia, who holds his hand dotingly. Okoye gazes at the window.
Sister Nakia, my prince, we are home.
Wakanda.
A question
Control S.
Okay.
Windows
So
M.
those
Desktop.
two... Oh,
Folder
wait,
view
let me
with
stop the
Windows Media
sharing.
Player. Alt S. Launch meeting dash zoom dash Google Chrome. Alt S.
Okay. Did I
Windows
stop
Media
the
Player
sharing?
to move. Launch meeting dash screen sharing meeting controls. Screen sharing meeting
Screen
controls.
sharing
Escape.
controls.
Oh.
Okay, it has been stopped. Okay, cool. Okay. So those two examples, the first one from a film In the Heights, which takes place in Washington Heights in New York City, which is a predominantly Latino. It's a Dominican neighborhood, and it's all about Dominican culture, that film. Beautiful woman who did the audio description, beautiful narrator. She has a wonderful voice, but with the pronunciations that she was Suanito, Dominicano Republico, it's just, if you're of that culture, it's obvious that she is not of that culture. She would not have been casted. And so that experience is very different for someone who's watching that content using audio description. It's not the same experience that someone without it, especially for those who are of that culture, because you're hearing those pronunciations and it just doesn't sound authentic, because it's not. The second one was Black Panther, and Black Panther, it was beautiful blackness all on that screen, and so the describer literally said Wakanda, so he pronounced it incorrectly, and it was a British white man, and again, nothing on him, but not of the culture, and so that was not culturally competent casting for a narrator of Black Panther or In the Heights in that case. So again, that could be put on the PL, the project leader or the project manager or the audio description director, but there's also opportunities for narrators to also say, hey, this doesn't seem like a right fit for me. I was asked to narrate something about a Korean experience, and I was just like, I appreciate being asked, but I don't think I'm not, I know I'm not of the culture. I don't think I'm appropriate for that. So as a consumer, I know what that's like to experience something. So there you go. The other two, I think I can kind of put together. So the next part of the process is the mix, the audio mix, and then there's a final QC process that should also take place to make sure everything is good. And similar to the writer and the other QC process, they all are the secondary checkpoints, right? And so those are also folks who should be aware of cultural competency to kind of catch, hey, did we miss this? Question things. Is this the right term? Should we be describing this that way? All of these are checkpoints for appropriate cultural competency within a film. I guess, again, even with all of these checkpoints, unfortunately, cultural competency is actually, it's being considered more, but there's still a lot of room. There's still a lot of room for correction and adoption of this, because there's many, many, many instances that, whether it be the narrator, which again is probably the one that's going to be easily identifiable, right, from the beginning of that film. But there are also opportunities to improve in just the way the culture is represented through the writing and whatnot. The unfortunate thing is that what happens is that, audio description, the guidelines originally said don't say things about identity within the script. So don't talk about identity, even if it's on screen. So what's happening there? You're erasing people on screen, literally erasing people on screen for those who are blind and those who are using AD. So that's a little bit about cultural competency. I know we had to keep it to a short amount of time. Lightning. I'm trying not to talk fast, but I'm thinking lightning. But yeah, there we go. So maybe we head into the Q&A portion.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. That was really enlightening, especially those, especially the examples. It's kind of crazy. So I want to see if we have any questions. I have several for Thomas, but do we have any questions? You can put them into the question and answer or in the chat. But Thomas, let's start off with something that I was wondering about. I know a lot of the people that are within our network are audio describing for theater.
Mm-hmm.
So they're audio describing for live performances. So often they're the whole thing. They're the producer, the narrator, everything. Do you have some tips for them, especially, I know in certain areas, they may be the only audio describer, so they may not be the person who would typically be cast for this. Do you have some tips or thoughts on what they should research? What are some of the common elements that people might get wrong? Those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything common, because it would depend on the content. But what I would say is that even though you may be the only person, you still have that ability to do that research, right? So if we're talking about the writing, and all of these elements in some capacity are still, like I said, involved, even if it's a one-person production, right, for the AD. So you can do the research, you can talk to other people. If you have, and I know this is dependent, right, you might be able to talk to people within the cast. But if your voice isn't necessarily the right voice for that, I don't see anything wrong with seeking out someone else. Now, there are issues I get of pay, and being able to kind of subcontract those types of jobs, but I think it could be still doable. The other thing is talk to people. I mentioned the idea of a blind QC process, and I know for one person process that's often left out, especially within the live. From what I hear, that's often not a part of the process. I would say, make relationships within the blind community, because you can really find people who are willing to assist with that. I would say make sure you pay them, but I would think that you can definitely find people to help with that process. There's blind people in every community. We're out here.
It looks like we have a question from Sharon Anderson. On a related matter, any suggestions about how best to introduce oneself in a culturally conscious way?
Introduce yourself in a culturally conscious way. I think I need a little bit more information. Like, what's the scenario we're talking about? What's the setting?
Let's see, Sharon. Not getting it. Oh, wait, here we go. Hang on. Or like at a conference, for example.
Okay. I'm still not sure what that means. But so introducing, so if I was to go to a conference and introduce myself, I'm just, hi, I'm Thomas. I mean, I would say my name. I think culturally, depending on what we're talking about, I think I'm personally into the self-image descriptions, right? Because if that's where we're going with this, I think and there's some controversy around that, whether to sort of self-identify. Number one, I think it's always up to the individual. I don't think anyone should be made to self-identify and give that information. But if people want to do that, that is a way of disseminate. That is a version of access, right? Because you providing that information about yourself gives me as a viewer, another person in that conference, some more information that's visible to everyone else. It doesn't mean that, I think we get into the thought process that means that I'm using that information in a certain way. And usually I think people think that that's a negative. It doesn't mean I'm going to use that information at all. But it does mean it's the same thing as a sighted person. If a sighted person sees me as a brown-skinned black man with a smooth shaven bald head, they're going to come to whatever determination they want to. And that same access is what I would. So that might mean if I know that there was another person with a smooth shaven bald head, I might want to just go over there and exchange sort of process. Hey, how do you shave your head? You know, it doesn't matter what it means to someone else. It matters what it means to me. And it's just about that access. So, I hope that kind of answers your question, but if there's more detail that I can help, please provide that.
Okay, and we have another question from Amit Taneja. Are there resources you would recommend for cultural competency in image description or alt text?
Yeah, one of the, and I believe they talk about it, but I think it's just a great resource. And anyway, alt text as poetry. That's I think it's ALT text, TETX as poetry. Even if you just Google that, but I think it's that.com or .org. They're a great resource because they have a workbook that folks can kind of download and get examples. And they're approaching it from a very creative way. And when I say creative, I just mean, it's not, folks think sometimes that the intent should be, if there are 5 trees, like you have to tell me there are 5 trees within this picture and there are 2 cars, and no. You can give certain information, but it's like this creative thing. It's about the vibe of the picture. It's what's communicated in that picture. What's the intent of that picture without telling me your interpretation of the intent. So I think that's a fabulous resource, and I'm pretty sure they get into some cultural competency stuff within that.
Great. We have another question. Whoops. We have a couple of questions. They keep going by so quickly. How do we go about finding the right service providers to support cultural competency?
You ask questions. So is it part of what they do? There are folks who you can even tell by some of the prior work from folks. Like if you notice, whether it be image descriptions or audio description, look at their work, because if you notice things on screen that, okay, wait, they're only, for example, they're only describing people of color. They're not describing white people as well. And that to me is a no-no, because you're making an assumption that white is the default. Well, that's a red flag for you. Whether they're describing people or not, that can be, those things are red flags. So I definitely recommend looking at prior work and talking to people. It is a shameless plug, but the Social Audio Description Collective, like it's in our philosophy that we talk about that. We want to describe the world as it is. And that's with all the beautiful identities. So.
And I want to ask you about the collective in a minute, but I also have a question from the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, who says our casting is extremely diverse regarding culture, race, gender, diversibility. In order not to erase those on stage from our blind patrons, do you suggest being culturally specific in describing the actor playing the role?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And those are Really interesting. I think there's a combination. I think the actors should play a role in that description. So, for example, we have a self-description template that we like to use and we give to folks that whoever we're describing or whoever's making that content. I think something like that is a fantastic way because you can incorporate some of that identity. But then you can do both. You can say the character of describe what that character is, played by the person describing that person. So that's some of the work that I know we've done in that area. But then also, especially with live plays, or any sort of content, don't ever forget the pre-show. Live content, the pre-show is fantastic because, often when describing content, you're limited, not often, we're always limited to the time that's available. And so, that these projects are never really created with audio description in mind. So a pre-show moves away from that. A pre-show says, we're going to give you all of this information up front. And as an audio description user, that's fantastic. And there's so many creative ways to go about it. Like, interviewing the actors and letting them voice their character descriptions right there in a pre-show is so accessible. It's fantastic. It stays with you, and it can be a nice, cool listen. I don't think we use pre-show enough. I'm a big proponent of pre-shows.
I actually just heard about an organization that had the pre-show available to everyone. It was over the speaker, the audio
nice.
description pre-show to everyone. And then it also let people know that there is audio description available who didn't know about it.
Nice. Yeah. That's fantastic.
So Thomas, I know one of the things you said that we also need to recognize our own biases. How do you, that's a tough for a lot of folks, and a lot of people haven't even considered it. How do you suggest going about that?
Ooh, I think even just thinking about it, right? Noticing what you notice what you observe. How are you thinking about certain things? It's really hard to talk about, right? But it's the truth. I mean, it's something that you don't necessarily have to talk about with someone. You can be honest with yourself. I know that I recognize things that, I might say something to my kids. Really, Daddy? Really? That's where you are? I'm like, oh, what did I say wrong? Okay, let me think about that. So we all have them. I don't understand. We can just, think about these things and make notice of what we watch. Make notice of the content that we take, and make notice of our own thoughts about these content. And then proceed. Go ahead, do a little bit of research. Don't be scared of the research. Don't be scared of getting new ideas and new concepts about all of these things when it comes to identity, whether that's disability, whether that's gender, whether that's so-called race. Race is not real. Whether that's ethnicities, whether that's color, all of that.
Thank you. That's a great question great answer to a difficult question. So Thomas, we just have a couple of minutes left. Is there anyone? I'm looking to see if there's anybody else that's got a question. If not, I am going to let you, you just finished wrapping up being the accessibility coordinator, accessibility manager for a PBS special.
Yeah. So it was a film called Unseen on PBS. It premiered Monday on PBS. And yeah, I had the opportunity to have a role as accessibility producer on that film, co-accessibility producer with partner Cheryl Green. And so we just, it was our function to get all of the access that we could in that film. So coordinating the audio description, coordinating the voicing of subtitles, as well as the AD, the writing of the AD. I don't write AD. Cheryl did. Captions, Cheryl does captions. But even more so, it was also working a lot with the filmmaker set and working with them to really sort of get them thinking about AD, or they were already thinking about the AD when they brought us on, but really continuously thinking about the AD and centering them, because, a lot of times when filmmakers start to hear about AD, and especially the way we talk about it in creativity, they want to go, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it's like, okay, my job was to always say, okay, who is this for? Remember, I'm always going to try to center you. The purpose of this AD is always about access. You're kind of getting away from that. you're moving a little way. It's nice, but you're gonna break the access if you do this. So that was a lot of my functionality in producing the AD and the captions, mainly the AD. So
Great. So people can have an example of your work and what you're talking about right now with cultural competency in this film. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's a film that is based in Latin culture. And so, you know, we had a Latina voicing it, Nefertiti Matos Olivares, and who, by the way, just did the Oscars. She was one of the voices on the Oscars doing the AD, a blind narrator as well. And the protagonist in this film, it follows a blind gentleman. He's undocumented, and it's all about his life and stuff. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And that is Unseen, and it's available on PBS. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Thomas, so much for coming and helping us
Thank
understand
you.
cultural competency in audio description and alt text. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us and asking such great questions. We'll see you at the next Lightning Talk. Bye, all.